Hey everybody, welcome back to Record-ology. Okay, this is going to be interesting. We are going to be taking a look at giant portable units. Why do they exist? How do they compare? What are they on the market to do? We'll do a sound test, all kinds of fun stuff. You're not going to want to miss this.
This is Record-ology.
For everybody that hates Crosley, this entire show will feature nothing but Crosley record players. And I actually defy you to tell me what's wrong with any of them, okay? Because there's nothing wrong with them. But we're not dwelling on that. We're here to talk about giant phonographs, giant portable record players. And here are two examples of rather large portables. How large are they? Well, let's go ahead and put a Crosley Cruiser portable next to them for comparison. There it is, Crosley. Okay, it's a little bit of a trick because this is a Crosley Cruiser, but it happens to be the Mini, so let's get that out of the way. But seriously, these are rather large. If you take a regular suitcase portable, such as the Crosley Cruiser, you can see that these are considerably larger. On the bottom there, we've got the Dansette Jr, which is an homage to the old 1950s portable British record players that were very popular back in the day. And you can see that it's considerably taller, wider, yes, and in fact deeper. If we put this next to the Portfolio on the top here, you can see that again, the Portfolio is significantly larger than this guy. So why would you want such a big portable unit? Isn't a portable unit supposed to be tiny? Kind of like this guy right here, this little mini cruiser. And look how big the mini cruiser is compared to the full-size cruiser. This is just a 3-inch record player, by the way. This is a novelty, but it's a cool one. One of my multiple 3-inch record players that I have. An interesting collectible. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about functional, useful, and yes, high-quality portables. So what is the difference between the Crosley Cruiser or other suitcase players that get so much hate, especially here on YouTube, and these other variants that many people have no idea even exist? What is the big difference? So my tripod decided to disintegrate between the last shot and this shot. However, it's nothing that some shipping tape and another piece of tripod and some ingenuity couldn't fix. All right, enough behind the scenes stuff. Time to invest in a new tripod setup. Anyway, so the reason why these larger, higher end, and yes, more expensive portables are worth it is that they produce a higher quality sound. The number one, actually I would say no, the number two argument against suitcase players is the sound quality. The number one is they destroy your records because this cartridge right here, this ceramic cartridge tracks heavier. More on that in a moment. Therefore, the thought process, well, if it's heavier, it must destroy your vinyl. Well, we've done so many tests on that, you guys. I'm not going to go back into that. They wear them out faster, but they're not going to destroy your records. But the second argument that they don't sound as good as a magnetic, it's true. So that's the main reason why you would want to upgrade. So from a styling and design aesthetic aside, from pure performance, these higher end units will perform more. And when I say higher end, we're talking, these are sub $100, anywhere from $39 to no more than $100, depending on the make and model. They're not all the same, but they're all similar enough in terms of performance. However, make sure that you get one that's impedance matched. So I would recommend a name brand unit, a Victrola, a Crosley, something that you've heard of before. Some of these that are made really cheaply have mismatched impedance, and that means the sound is extra tinny. But the modern, newer ones don't have that problem as much. The biggest difference cost-wise is, sub $100, and these are more around the $150, $200 range. By the way, this is the Crosley Portfolio. This is a limited edition, this Beatles one, and this was a Record Store Day special. We reviewed it, and then they were no more. I had seen them in like one record shop down in Houston, but pretty much these are sold out. They only made like 1,500 of them. When I was preparing for the show, I was very surprised to find out that there are, in fact, a very limited supply still available at least one Amazon warehouse. I'm going to put a link down below. As of the publication of this video, there's at least one of these still available you can grab. Otherwise, the base unit without the Beatles overlay is pretty much always available. And why is the sound quality better on the higher end units? Well, it all has to do with this guy right here. That's a ceramic cartridge. It just doesn't sound as good. It's harsher, it's colder, there's not as much bass response, especially if it is not properly impedance matched in the unit. So that's the number one thing. And why do they put them on these suitcase players that are like budget players? Just because they're cheap. They're cheap to make, they're cheap to buy, they're cheaper to sell. And most people buying a record player at this level don't know enough yet to know that that may be a red flag for sound quality. So what's the difference? What's the cartridge like on the higher end units? The higher end units, both of which we're going to look at here in a minute, because this is really about these two units more so than the Cruiser, are going to feature this little white fronted cartridge here. That's an Audio-Technica 3600L. It is the most popular entry-level magnetic cartridge. If you remember, the other one was a ceramic. This is a magnetic. It uses a different technology. If you want to learn more about how cartridges work, check out our videos where we've gone into great detail on that, specifically for beginners. But suffice to say, it sounds a whole heck of a lot better. They cost a minimal amount more to produce, to buy, and to sell. And that's one reason why these units cost a little bit more. So that's the foundation for why a giant portable unit. Now, is it worth it? So a lot of people point out that the suitcase players share a very common mechanism. It's not identical. There's different variants, very minuscule but noticeable if you know where to look, variants of a very popular, originated by BSR back in the 1980s, mechanism for the platter, for the tone arm, all that stuff. It's cheap. It's an off-the-shelf unit that anybody that makes a turntable or decides to can just purchase and put in those units, again, featuring that ceramic cartridge. And the ceramic cartridge requires a little bit less circuitry. It's one of the reasons why it's cheaper, and people like to put those in the super low-end ones. But what if you want a higher-end unit? You still want portability, but you want a magnetic cartridge. You want it to sound good. Now, the fact that bigger units like this tend to sound better doesn't mean that it has to be bigger to sound good. You could, and I have seen it done, fit the components of the higher quality units into that same or very similar size small package. We've reviewed a number of very, very fine performing portables with the higher end mechanisms. These two have shared mechanisms a lot of the time. You'll see that the platter on both of these looks very similar. Again, it is a smaller platter. It's not a full-size platter like a component system, but it's a platter that's big enough to support any size record you want to put on here, from 12-inch, 10-inch, 7-inch, etc., etc. You couldn't fit a 16-inch disc on here, but most of us aren't going to be doing that in our day-to-day. Also features the same tone arm, the same head shell, and yes, even a counterweight. So no, there's no way that this thing could damage your records. It's going to be very gentle on them and have all the features that you would want in a portable unit. This little counterbalance, just screw it in or screw it out, and it either lightens or increases the weight of that stylus. Now, the weight of the stylus is an interesting thing. A lot of people just think automatically, oh, the lighter the better, which isn't necessarily the case. The reason why those suitcase players with the red tip cartridges are more harsh or wear out records more so than these ones is because that technology, those ceramic cartridges, require 5 to 6 grams of downforce in order to function properly. That's why they're doing that. They're not poorly designed. They're designed to do what they need to do to get the sound out of that particular cartridge. Whereas this, the Audio-Technica 3600L, tracks a lot lighter, between 3.5 and 4 grams of downforce. Somebody may say, well, I've got a record player and the cartridge on it tracks at 1 gram or 1.5 grams. And that's good, but that doesn't mean it's better for the record necessarily, because this particular cartridge is designed to track at 3.5 to 4 grams, which is why they give you the range to make that happen and the cartridge in order to do so. So don't be fooled into thinking just arbitrarily lighter is better, because actually if you're tracking too light for the cartridge, that can actually damage your records just like too much weight. Now, when you're dealing with a portable unit, you are going to be having a manual turntable. You're going to have to cue it up. You're going to have to play the song that you want to play or the whole record, and you're going to have to return the tone arm when it's done. There's no automatic return, no automatic start. There's no changer capabilities. It's a completely manual experience, which is fine, but just be aware of that, okay? Why would you want a portable? Well, you could take it to a friend's house. You could take it to a party. You can take it to work if it was appropriate to do so. There's a lot of different use cases. These do require power plugged into the wall. These are not battery operated. There are battery operated portables, good ones too. But for the most part, when you see a portable, it doesn't mean it's necessarily battery operated, because it usually is not. So some things to keep in mind. These are record players, they're not turntables, and I always say the difference to me is a record player has built-in speakers. You can see the speaker grill right on the front of this unit, whereas a turntable does not. And a turntable requires, in some cases, an external preamplifier and an external amplifier or powered speakers. These are self-contained. Everything you need to play a record in one self-contained unit. Even a good, well-designed portable is usually not going to sound as good as even a moderate or entry-level deck that belongs in a hi-fi setup. It's just the way it is. That being said, you can still get fantastic high-fidelity stereo sound out of these. Okay, let's look at these particular two, look at the controls, the differences, and then we'll do a sound test. Okay, so the portfolio, like I said, a little bit smaller than the Dansette on the right. The speakers for this guy are going to be on the sides. There's metal speaker grills on both sides. You're not going to get a really good stereo image with this unit because the speakers being on the sides they're not designed to give you that true high fidelity person sitting in the middle of two speakers kind of luscious stereo sound. It's kind of like designed to shoot sound on either side of the room and fill up a space, of which it does a really good job. It's kind of the opposite of having speakers so close together that you don't get that stereo effect because they're so close together. This is like they're shooting out sideways. So that's something to consider. But again, with a portable, you're mostly like, I just want sound. I just want music to be in the room, right? So you've got that common mechanism. This one is shock mounted. That's why it wiggles a little bit. Some people write to me and they're like, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with my record player. It wiggles. It's like bouncy. That's to keep the record vibrations isolated between the motor, the belt, and the cartridge. So there's no feedback. There's no unwanted noise. Built-in 45 adapter. Goes on right there if you have a record with a large hole. There's a switch right here for auto stop. That's the one automatic feature that these often have, is when the tone arm gets to the end, it will stop automatically. You can turn that on or off. 3 speeds, 78 RPM if you want to play those old shellac records. If you're interested in those, by the way, check out our recent video where we toured the holy grail of 78s. It's an amazing, amazing video, 2-part video. We did it in the last week or so. Anyway, you can play those. The stylus on here is called a micro groove stylus, meaning that it's narrower. So if you want to play an old-fashioned antique record like that, you not only need to have it at 78 RPMs, but you need a special stylus. And this white piece actually pops off so you can replace it. And you can put on a special stylus that you can buy like on Amazon or eBay with a wider groove. So when you play those 78s, they sound amazingly good. Amazingly good. So you don't have to do that. You can still use this stylus and play a 78. It just won't sound quite as good. And then obviously 45 RPM for singles, records with a large hole here in the United States, and 12-inch LPs, 33 RPM. All that's available to you. This particular model also receives Bluetooth. I don't think this one transmits Bluetooth off the top of my head. I think it's a receiver. So you can hook up your phone to it and it will act as a Bluetooth speaker. Like we all need another one of those. I have so many things that receive Bluetooth. I don't know about you. And then so it's got a feature switch between Bluetooth and phonograph. This one also has a pitch control, so you can adjust the speed to make sure that's perfect. On and off volume, an aux input. And then this one has a headphone jack as well, which is really, really cool. And I already talked about that adjustable counterbalance back there. Let's look at the similar, very similar, but slightly different Dansette Jr. This one is indeed very, very similar. There are some differences. This one is not shock mounted, so this is rigid. Not a huge deal in a portable to have them. Some of them are rigid like this. You're not going to have a huge, maybe there would be a minuscule amount more motor noise that you may notice through the headphone jack, which is on this unit. I almost thought there wasn't, but it's down here on the front. You can see we've got an aux in and a headphone jack. Down here, while we're here, we've got the phono and aux switch, and the on-off volume control. The speakers for this guy are in this grill, so they are going to be stereo, but pretty close together, so it's going to be hard to get that stereo separation again. But being a portable, it's just going to punch sound into the room. And then this cool badge, Dansette Jr, Dansette series, I really like that. This one has 2 handles on the side. It's so big and rather heavy that it's designed to be carried with 2 hands. It's a beast. It really, really is. But I still love it. It also has a speed switch is over here, and that's reminiscent of the original Dansette Jr. or the Dansette series, which were rim drive, which instead of using a belt like this one has, actually used a little idler wheel under the platter and used to have a switch very similar to this, except it would be probably under the platter a little bit. It would kind of be under there instead of away from it like this. And that's how you would pick the speeds. This one's only 2-speed. Unlike the other guy that we looked at a minute ago that played the 78s, this one only plays 33 RPM and 45. So no antique records on here. But that's the speed select switch on this one instead of it being under here, which is why there's only one switch over here. Let me turn it so you can see it. And that one switch is that auto on and off. 45 adapter, similar spot, counterbalance, all that stuff, very, very similar. So there you go. Let's give them a listen and see which one we think sounds better. Okay, guys, I've got my stereo mic on the front. That's why it sounds a little different. We are going to be listening to this 10-inch, 33 RPM LP. This is Jackie Gleason's first album, Music for Lovers Only. I've got a couple different versions of this. I actually have a collection of Jackie Gleason music. If you like kind of like 1950s lounge music, just ambient background music, highly recommend this stuff. You can find this all day long at thrift stores. Also want to point out here, everything we've looked at here is contemporary. None of this stuff is vintage. These are all new units. These are all modern, made within the last few years, or in this case, a couple of years with these guys. So if you're talking about vintage portables, which it can also get large, including if you're talking about Caliphone portables or Audiotronics classroom portables, that's a separate subject for a separate day. I'm talking about modern portable units, getting good sound quality, having good experience, all that good stuff. All right, let's start with this Beatles Yellow Submarine edition of the Crosley Portfolio. Take it away, Mr. Gleason, who, by the way, literally just put his name. It was a name band, so that I don't think he wrote any of the music. He just put his name on it. They hired some of the best musicians of the era, so the music is fantastic. It's just Jackie Gleason was an actor. He wasn't a band leader per se. I mean, it sounds pretty dang good for a portable. It's noticeably warmer and richer than you would get with a suitcase, like a suitcase player that has a ceramic cartridge. With this magnetic, you get those full tones, which is great. No, I'm not playing a modern pop or rap record, which would really push the bass capabilities. And we may have done that before. Each of these have had their own full test. I wanted to kind of compare 2 of the largest units that I have. So yeah, I mean, it sounded pretty dang good. The one thing I will say is it was noticeably quiet. I had this thing cranked, totally cranked, and it was just not even quite adequately loud enough. If you were just kind of casually having it in the background, it would be okay, or if you were sitting right next to it, but it was by no means loud. And what I've discovered with modern units, especially portable units, is that the amplifiers in them are either producing high output or they are not. If we got 3 or 4 of these, the next 2 may be louder. So it's kind of a production line type of deal. Let's see how this guy performs. I got to cut the camera for a second because I got to switch the power cord, and we'll give this guy a listen. Okay, so I'm going to put this on 33 RPM. I'm going to turn the unit on. I also want to mention as well that both of these have audio outputs, so you can connect them to a stereo system, external speakers, all that good stuff. All right, let's give this one a listen. So it is a bit louder, still not as loud as I would like it to be, at least with this record, although it's noticeably higher fidelity. You can hear the crackle, the pops, the scratches. This record's pretty clean, but it's still from the 50s. So it's going to sound a little poppy, a little scratchy, which I actually like that aesthetic, but it's something to consider. So yeah, interesting. This was warmer tonality, a little bit more muddier sounding, and this one was sharper and crisper. So for those of you that say, oh, it's the same mechanism, why do you even play it? Why do you even compare it? It's the same cartridge. There are a lot of factors. The amplification, the speakers, a lot of components can be different, even between two similar units, as you can see there. But an interesting comparison. And as always, I want to know your thoughts. Do you have a portable? What's your favorite portable, and what do you think about portables altogether? All right, my friends, and that is going to do it for today. I hope you thought this was an interesting show. I thought it was an interesting discussion, just a chance for you and I to sit down, hang out together, talk record player, talk shop, as they say, and kind of maybe enlighten each other on some aspects of record collecting, of vinyl. If you're new to record collecting, this was probably more enlightening for you than if you are not new, but perhaps you picked up something you didn't know before. I know I'm learning stuff every single day from you guys, from researching for these shows. It's just a fun thing to do. I hope you're enjoying the fall season, the cooler temperatures, hopefully, depending on where in the world you are. Anyhow, my friends, that's gonna do it for today. Happy record hunting. We'll see you next time.